Now, this year in particular has been absolutely mental. It has been absolutely insane. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit. I think I've already spoken too long, frankly, so I'm not going to go into too much details. But just to give you an idea, I started the year in Berlin, Germany, having just left the United States again, because I had a client slash friend that had a company that was paying me like $1,000 a month. It was by far the biggest part of my income, and they were in Germany, and I was encouraged to go there, and so I decided to go there. But then that fell through, and they basically, there was no more income going to be coming, which I found out just about 2 weeks before I actually was supposed to go to Germany, and so I was totally screwed. And so I ended up finding a job teaching English in Barcelona, because at that point the rest of my income for my business was very low. Let's call it $200 a month. It was tiny. And I found a job in Barcelona, so I ended up in Barcelona on January 4th. I lived there for 6 weeks. Then I lived in Montreal for about the same amount of time, 6 weeks to 2 months. Then I was in Finland, where I almost moved officially for a job. Then I was back in the United Kingdom for 6 weeks or so. Then I was in Italy for about a month, contemplating settling there. I had a pretty traumatic experience there, and then now I've been in Barcelona again for another 2 months and a half. It's only August, and barely, and it's not just about the drastic changes in country and living environment. It's also the nature of things and how it happened. Some of them were pretty violent, not physically, literally, but it's just very in the nature of how things happened, and just how sudden things shifted into a whole new realm of reality for me. And there's also other things such as personal relationships, this year, basically right before the year started, me and my ex-partner ended our 4-year relationship, which is, as anybody probably knows, that's a pretty huge transition to go through. And I also ended up in another relationship, and I decided, because I was so exhausted of this whole thing, and I was so optimistic and enthusiastic about this relationship that I was in, that I moved to Montreal, Canada. I took my whole life, I moved it there with high hopes that would be the final destination, and that's where I would settle. Now, all I'll say is that didn't work out. There are two sides to every story. I'm not going to go into any details or pretend that I'm a perfect saint, but it's just to say that didn't go well, and the way it ended was very tragic and very just traumatizing. And I went through a period in the United Kingdom where I was the most depressed I've ever been in my life, I think, for 6 weeks. And it's just there's also things like, when I was in Barcelona, I spent 2 months learning Vietnamese. Now, when you learn a new language, it is a very deep process, and when I go through it, just like many other sort of accomplished polyglots, it's the process is highly accelerated. The process to which you absorb a culture, a language, a way of thinking. In my case, as I'm learning a new language, I am, from the very first moment, everything I see, hear, observe, I am collecting data points. I'm watching, how do they use this word? When is it used? How do they say it? Do they talk loud? Are they argumentative in this culture? My linguistic acquisition process is it's accelerated, and it's a very deep thing that I go through. And so to spend 2 months extremely intensively learning Vietnamese, for example, and then all of a sudden switching and then having to do something else, or I was learning Catalan in the very beginning of the year. So there have been drastic changes in my language learning, in my linguistic environments, in my cultural environments, in where I've lived, in my personal relationships. It has just been the most unbelievable roller coaster of a year from almost every angle for me. And so to try to continue creating content for my YouTube channel and my Facebook and everything else consistently has just been a nightmare. And to be honest, I've felt so bad for my subscribers, because it's like, for example, I was so optimistic about moving to Barcelona before the year started. I actually filmed about 5 episodes of a series that I was going to document myself learning Catalan. I had it already filmed. The series was ready to go, and then that changed very quickly. And then, for example, as you know, I started my Korean from Scratch series in Montreal, Canada, where I was documenting the process of learning Korean, and I was so excited. I mean, I was over the moon about that series. I did 6 episodes, 1 per day. And then boom, my life changed so drastically, and I just couldn't sustain that, and I had to switch my language activities and therefore also my YouTube content, because you have to understand that it's like I have so many projects going on with my company and everything surrounding that. And when you move countries like that, especially when it's in such a sort of sudden, once again, somewhat violent way to characterize how these things happened metaphorically, it shifts everything. Your plans shift, your expectations, your dreams, your vision for your future, be that short or long term. Everything shifts, and so all these sort of projects, they shift too. They suffer. They get put on hold, or they get cancelled, or and so. I swear I've tried so hard to produce good content. I haven't even had my camera or my microphone or any of my equipment these last 4 or 5 months or whatever it's been. So I've been having to do all my videos with my phone and my headphones as a microphone. But I just have not been able to do it the way I want, and I feel very bad because I've started series like the Korean series, like my series about reading a novel in Spanish, and every time I finally manage to build up some consistency and some momentum, I go through some unbelievable change and end up in one of these awful situations like right now, and it's just so difficult for me to maintain all these projects.